Hello guys, how are you?
I'm Hardeep Singh. Welcome back to your own YouTube channel. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you got guesswork. Please, guys, participate in everyday listening and reading practice test to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Press the bell icon for the upcoming notifications. Don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams.
Part 1.
You will hear a woman calling an online fashion company. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Hello, this is the Watermelon website customer assistance line. How can I help you today? Hello, I bought a pair of shoes online, but they are the wrong size and I'd like to return them. Can I have your name, please? Yes, it's Jennifer William. That's William with no S? Thank you. Do you have an order number? Where do I find that? It's under your address at the top of the page. Oh, yes, the number in bold. It's ON. Oh, I suppose that stands for order number? 99800? So that was 99800, correct? Yes, when the shoes came, they were the size that I ordered, but they are just too small to get on my feet. What day were the shoes delivered? Last week sometime. I just hadn't had a chance to open the package. It's been sitting in my front hall since then. I think it was Wednesday that they arrived. No, it was Thursday. I remember because I only worked a half day that day. So, would you like to return them and cancel the order, or would you like to return this pair and order them in a larger size? If I order another size, will I have to pay for delivery again? No, it's included in the original shipment price of £7. Great, okay. I'll try the next size then. These were size 37 in black, so can you send me the same pair in a 38? What was the name of the model of the shoes? They are called Molly, Molly. They are flat-heeled ankle shoes with a zip on the side. Oh yes, they are lovely. I have a pair myself. They are so comfortable. Unfortunately, we no longer have any in a 38 in black. I'm afraid you will have to order them in another colour. We still have them in green, navy, red and natural tan. Is the tan light or dark in colour? I don't want light tan shoes for the winter. They are quite light, I'm afraid. Perhaps... I'll take the navy ones then.
Before you listen to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10.
How do I get the other shoes back to Watermelon? Just pack them back in the box and put a new label on it with our address. You can see the return address at the bottom of the invoice. Write returned product clearly on the label. Can I give the box to the counter when the new boots are delivered? No, I'm afraid it doesn't work that way. You need to take the box to the post office and post it back to us. Send it COD and we will take care of the payment when it is delivered. Send it how? Write COD on the package. It stands for Collect on Delivery. It means the recipient pays for the postage. Okay, It still is rather a bother that I have to organize sending it back to you myself. How do I know that you won't charge me twice for the boots? I am sending you an email now with the order change. It shows that you will be refunded when the boots are returned to us. So for the moment, your credit card will show 2 separate payments, but the first one will be reimbursed. Can I just check your delivery address again? Actually, can I change the delivery address to where I work? I'll give you that address, but make sure you write reception on the delivery note. Then I can pick it up from there. Certainly, reception. What is the address? The company name is Jackson and Partners Accountants, and the address is 23 Beacon Street, Southport. The postcode is PR8 19Q. Can you spell the street name for me, please? Is it Bacon? No, it's Beacon. Beacon. Okay, thank you. While I have you here, the matching belt to these boots is currently on sale. It's in the same navy leather and the buckle is silver like the studs on the boots. It's rather nice. Would you be interested in adding it to your order? I'm afraid I never wear them, so even at a discount like that, it still wouldn't be worth it to me. All right, now I've just sent you the email about your change of order and address, and the boots will be dispatched today. You should receive them later this week. Thank you for calling Watermelon. Thank you, and goodbye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You will hear a journalist talking about a resort on a Pacific island called Longshark. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15.
On a tiny island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is the Longshark Resort. The island itself is only a 7-kilometer walk around its cliffs and beaches and gets its name from the shark-like shape it has when seen from the air. Not that many people get to see it from the air, as access is only by boat from the Tahiti Islands, 3 hours away. It's not even on any maps. The upmarket resort has space for only 26 guests at a time, and they are required to stay for at least 2 weeks. The island is quite the secret and does absolutely no publicity to attract customers. Longshark is fully booked for a year in advance, purely through word of mouth. The Polynesian people of the island who run the resort refuse to do interviews, so the only information I have been able to get is from people who have actually stayed there, wondering what the great mystery of the island was. I put out word online that I was trying to find people who had been guests who could give me some information. The couple I finally tracked down had stayed there recently, but asked to remain anonymous as they want to return there. They were worried that they might be refused if word got out they were talking to a journalist about the island. So what is the big deal? There are hundreds of similar islands with fancy resorts across the Pacific. What makes this one so special? Well, according to the people I talked to, nothing really. just the fact that it is so exclusive and secretive. Mark and Susie, not their real names, said that it was just wonderful to be completely cut off from the world.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20.
There is no Wi-Fi available at all, and not really any telephone signal, unless you use the satellite phone in the main office of the resort. And apparently, this is only allowed if there is a medical emergency. There is no television or newspapers and no radio. The resort is quite luxurious, with a top-class restaurant, breakfast delivered to rooms, and day spa facilities that are all included in the price of your stay. The island's boat goes to and from Tahiti every day for supplies, but guests are not allowed to do day trips. They can only use the boat to arrive and leave. Guests on the island are cared for in every way, but in complete isolation from the world. Susie told me she chatted with quite a few famous people, but after a few days, her interest in star spotting evaporated as she relaxed on the beach or went snorkeling in the bay. The bay is surrounded by a coral reef with a pod of dolphins that visit daily, no less, and swim with the guests. I was starting to see the charms of this place, but I still didn't completely get it. There must have been something else they weren't telling me. Susie said it was impossible to explain, and that perhaps the island wouldn't have had the same effect 20 years ago, but now it was rare to find anywhere on the planet that was completely cut off from everything. Both of them work in high finance, and their phones are never off when they are at home. Mark said the first couple of days he felt guilty that none of his clients were able to contact him, and he even made an attempt to use the phone in the main office, but they said no. He said he would never normally have booked to stay in a place for such a length of time, and added that he now understood why the hotel made people stay that long, because it had taken him quite a few days to shake off the world and completely relax. Susie said she understood that this probably wasn't the holiday for everyone. She wouldn't tell me how much it cost, but I can imagine it must have been extremely expensive, possibly 2 years' salary for an average person. I can't see myself ever being able to afford something like that, and the only similar thing I can imagine is being out in the middle of the desert or in a forest somewhere. I think Long Shark is different though, because it is the combination of safety, luxury, and isolation that makes it so popular with the lucky few who can manage to get a reservation.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You'll hear a man talking about living and working on Trinidad. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25.
Hi, I'm Steve Penfold, and I'm here today to tell you about my gap year, which I took about 20 years ago. Unlike many students these days who go travelling or get some work experience between school and university, I decided to do something completely different after finishing my degree. I applied to work for a charity organisation. What it does is it sends people with particular skills to countries where those skills are needed. Apart from having some experience teaching English to summer school students, I didn't have any particularly useful skills, I thought, but luckily I was still accepted. I had to find the money for the flight, but you get free accommodation. I stayed with a family of 5. And you do get paid, but not much. It's a bit like pocket money, enough to get by. I worked in an orphanage and taught English at a local school. Where was I? Well, originally I was going to be sent to a village in India, but at the last minute the organisation decided to send me to Trinidad. Now, this is a fascinating place. It's an island in the Caribbean. Well, in fact, the country is actually 2 islands. The smaller one is called Tobago, which is connected somehow to the word tobacco. Anyway, there I was, a young white guy living and working on an island which is mostly a mixture of descendants from Africa and India. The Africans were originally brought over as slaves, and the Indians came later as indentured workers. That means they agreed to come for a specific time, but many of them stayed. There are also some Trinidadians of Chinese and British origin, though the native inhabitants were basically wiped out by colonialization. I myself felt completely accepted and had the time of my life. The language everyone speaks is English, so there was no problem for me there, but some concepts don't quite translate. They're pure Trinidadian. There's the term liming, for example, which means sitting around watching the world go by. Also, there's the famous carnival, when the whole island is taken up in playing mass. For a whole month, around February or March, it depends when Easter is, everyone's busy preparing costumes, practicing calypsos, soca and steel pan music, and most importantly, partying.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30.
When the actual official carnival starts, it's days of 24-hour dancing in the streets. In Trinidad, it's called whining. You've probably seen this sort of thing on TV, in the more famous carnival in Rio, or even at the Notting Hill Carnival in London. Many people join bands, each one of which has a theme. For example, the Sea or Jungle Fever, and they have costumes designed and made to go with the theme. These can cost $1,000 for the king and queen of each band. They're incredible. The whole city is a non-stop party zone, full of colour and sound. It's serious too. The bands are in competition and the winner gets $1 million. Sorry, I got a bit carried away with those memories. Back to my real job there. The orphanage was called St. Augustine's, and that's also the name of the place where it was, St. Augustine, a town just outside the capital city, Port of Spain. I didn't have any particular job description, just to be with the children and tell stories, sing songs and play games. Oh, and we also went camping in the jungle once. I could tell you a few stories about that particular escapade. Every time I arrived at the gate, kids would come running towards me, shouting, with big smiles on their faces. The younger children seemed fascinated by my blonde hair and loved to touch it as if it was something miraculous. The English teaching I did 2 days a week in a primary school for 6 to 11-year-olds. The kids may have been poor, but they all wore neat and clean uniforms and were so respectful and enthusiastic. I've now been teaching for many years in different countries, and I still think those were the best students I've ever taught. What else did I do while I was there? I swam a lot. Can you imagine what it's like swimming with dolphins and with pelicans diving into the sea right next to you? More seriously, I trained to be a Samaritan. That's someone who listens and supports people who have problems with their lives. Overall, what I took from the experience was a sense of being in another culture, or rather cultures. As humans, we all share many characteristics, but we express ourselves in various ways. In Trinidad, there are lots of different communities and religions, and so many different kinds of festival to see. Hindu, Muslim, Christian, as well as some rather mysterious African traditions. There are quite a few Rastafarians too. Trinidad is, as Americans are fond of saying of their own country, a melting pot, where everybody is greeted warmly. Go and see for yourself. I'm not sure how it's changed since I was there, but I'd love to find out.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear a writer giving a talk about the different kinds of writing that the audience might want to try doing. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
So I'm now going to say a few words about the various different kinds of writing you may want to consider. Each has its own challenges and rewards, and it's really a question of seeing what suits you best. There are no rights and wrongs here. Let's start by considering the short story. Remember that a short story isn't just a very concise novel. There are 3 basic styles: the story itself, the slice of life section, and the surprise type, and all of them are equally valid as treatments of the genre. When producing a short story, you don't have time for a slow build-up of interest, so you need to get in there straight away and begin with a crisis. Then there's non-fiction, which can sell very well, with biographies in particular frequently hitting the bestseller lists. It's important, however, to be sure your chosen topic is genuinely interesting to people, and you know enough about it to do it justice. So when you're submitting your idea to a publisher, it's worthwhile to give them details of specialist knowledge you have. What about articles? Now, this is a very wide area, of course, going from the very learned and obscure to the populist gossip type. Articles based on giving advice are a proven area, and to give them a sufficient focus, you should produce your article for a definite market. That will help to define your purpose. Turning to something different, there's the question of poetry. It's often hard to define what poetry is exactly. Maybe it's easier to say what it isn't. But it should be subtle, so the message of a poem oughtn't to be overly obvious. True poems let the ideas sit there for the reader to ponder. What they must do is sound good, like singing. So I recommend reading what you write aloud to yourself to check the melody. Well, then there's plays, which are basically novels, but told only through conversation. A playwright includes minimal instructions for actions, but not for every small action the actors will perform. Things such as moves towards sofa and so on are for the director to come up with. If you're thinking of trying your hand at a play, a good starting point would be to educate yourself a little in the art of acting, so that you know what the people who deliver your work can and can't do with it. What next? There's radio, of course. Radio uses an enormous range of material, and the BBC Writing for Radio Handbook contains information about all of this. To begin with, I suggest regional stations for sending your stuff to. The competition for national radio is extremely high. OK, another interesting area is children's literature. Now, very few, if any, children's books are published without pictures, but this doesn't mean that you, as writer, have to draw them. That's for the illustrator. What you do need to do is be clear who you want to write for. So fix on one age group, and then aim your stories at that. Right, I've saved what I consider to be the best and the hardest till last, the novel. Very long and very difficult to do well, but certainly not impossible, as any bookshop shelves will confirm. One of the first things to decide is from what point of view you will tell your story. A popular choice is the first person, and this technique certainly gives a sense of immediacy for the reader, while many new writers find it easier to project themselves into their main character if they can write in his or her name. But that assumes, of course, that the main character is somehow like the writer, which may or may not be the case. Meanwhile, if your book is all narrated by I, you can only put into your story things which are experienced by that character, which may prove to be rather restricting. Now, there are all sorts of pitfalls for the novelist, and many of them relate to the issue of providing a balanced narrative. Every time you introduce a character into the story, you have decisions to make. Of course, you want to populate your landscape with a variety of people to maintain interest, but don't feel you have to decorate every one of them in elaborate detail. The same goes for irony. All too often, an inexperienced writer will create a strong ironic situation and then spoil it by spelling out what they mean by it, as if readers were too stupid to understand. A few contrasting details should serve to make the point clear. A big challenge for new novelists is dialogue. What is the relationship between conversation as people really speak and as it is in novels? Well, it depends. If you recorded actual conversations and copied them straight into your narrative, readers would get confused and bored, all those unfinished sentences going nowhere. On the other hand, you don't want to write out page-long utterances by characters, as these will seem unrealistic to an extreme, but you can insert minor descriptions and actions to vary the pace and add interest. Well, I hope what I'm saying is encouraging and not too off-putting about the various difficulties. Are there any questions at this point?
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
So guys, don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test and speaking, you got guesswork. Please guys participate in everyday new IELTS listening and reading practice tests to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. For more IELTS material, visit my official website www.ieltsupdatesandrecentexams.com. The link is given below in the description. If you need PDF files of latest IELTS material, then please join my Telegram channel. So guys, please write your score below the comment section. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you all guys. Stay tuned, stay safe.